astronauts on board America's first space station may have staged a mutiny on board to protest working conditions. Let's find out if that really happened on a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True. Well, hey there, you are listening to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds like I just made it up out of thin air, but it's really true. This is all part of the WCBE podcast experience in Columbus, Ohio, and available on all podcast platforms. Also, the NPR app and website. My name's Michael Kent. This is episode 229. So happy to have you back, and thank you for listening. We'll be meeting a new friend later in the show, Elyssa Phillips. That's going to be super exciting. I hope you're having a great week. I traveled to Hershey, Pennsylvania for a conference. I had a nice time there. I get to be home all week, and then I'm heading out on the college party cruise after that. Should be a good time. Then, at the end of the month, you can catch me at Keller's in Erie. That's a magic and comedy club. Then I'll be doing a benefit in Salamanca, New York. All those details are on my website. If you're in those areas, you want to come to see a show, let me know. Some quick housekeeping things: merch, Patreon, reviews. Merch is on the website, theinternetsaysitstrue.com. We got t-shirts and mugs there. The Patreon is patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's where you can see the guest interview videos. You can also get all kinds of bonuses there. And then reviews. Reviews are awesome if you leave them on Apple Podcasts. It seems like anything other than Apple Podcasts doesn't really matter, but I hate begging for stuff, but it all really does help. So anyway, let's get going on this one. In order to talk about this mutiny that may have happened in 1973, we need to first talk about what's happening right now. 8 days. That's all it was supposed to be. Astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore were on a mission to demonstrate the Boeing Starliner's ability to transport crews to and from the International Space Station. They weren't on a mission to conduct research in space or do ISS repairs. It was a short stay because the act of traveling to and from the ISS was the test. That was June 5th of 2024. As of the release of this episode on March 10th, 2025, they're still up there, 278 days later. It all started because the the Boeing Starliner, encountered thruster problems. After several arduous days of testing both in space and on the ground back at the Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, it was determined that it wouldn't be safe to return to Earth using the Starliner, and a plan was launched to bring the stranded astronauts back using SpaceX's Crew 9 mission. That was a mission that put the SpaceX aircraft at the ISS in September of 2024, with the astronauts' return scheduled for February of 2025. That was last month. But then that was delayed. Now the plan is to have them return with SpaceX Crew 10 mission, which launches March 12 and returns to Earth on March 16th. Elon Musk, the man at the head of SpaceX, claimed very publicly that the reason the astronauts were stranded was due to politics. In fact, in a recent Oval Office press briefing, President Trump was asked about it.
These two Starliner astronauts stuck in space for 8 months. Have you spoken to them?
They left them alone. Biden left them up there.
And what do you know about that?
I know everything about it. I said, we have two astronauts that are stuck in space. I have asked Elon, I said, do me a favor. Can you get him out? He said, yes. He is preparing to go up, I think, in 2 weeks.
What do you know about how this went down? Because he's saying that the Biden White House was offered some kind of SpaceX rocket to go get these guys, and they said no.
That's what I heard. I can't tell you that, but that's what I heard. Because, they've been left up there. I hope they like each other, but maybe they'll love each other. I don't know. But they've been left up there. Think of it. And I see the woman with the wild hair, a good solid head of hair she's got. There's no kidding. There's no games with her hair, but...
So that's what our current president had to say about it. Now, Butch Wilmore, one of the stranded astronauts, agreed with Elon Musk that it was political, but Suni Williams, the other one, the one with the hair, said that they were always prepared for contingencies and that they don't feel abandoned. She also publicly disagreed with Musk's future plans for the space station because he says he wants to deorbit it within the next 5 years. The former ISS commander, Andreas Mogensen, pushed back on Musk's assertions, and Musk returned fire, calling the man a slur on his platform X. NASA's reaction was to disagree with Musk, saying that the extended stay was due to technical issues with Boeing's Starliner and not political interference. Assuming the astronauts come back home on March 16th, which is in about a week from now, they'll have been in space for 285 days, 277 days longer than anticipated. This is still short of the record. Astronauts Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko had been on the ISS for 340 days when they returned in 2016. The reason I bring this all up is due to some parallels to today's story. Like the Boeing Starliner test flight mission, the Skylab 4 mission ran longer than anticipated. They also both encountered technical mishaps once in space, and both the Skylab 4 crew and the Boeing test flight crew had to adapt to a new mission and to do much more work than they signed up for. For the current astronauts, they've worked hard to maintain their physical and mental health, following some well-established protocols and training for if this sort of thing happened. And one of the reasons this training exists is because of what happened on Skylab 4, where the mental health and attitude of the crew wasn't as positive. We'll talk about what happened on Skylab 4 in 1973 after a quick break.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
Hey, I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. Skylab 4's crew was the largest all-rookie crew in the history of NASA. All 3 astronauts were first-timers when it came to spaceflight. Gerald Carr was the commander of the mission, Edward Gibson the science pilot, and William Pogue the pilot. The Saturn 1B launch vehicle and Apollo Command Module took them to space on November 16, 1973. They docked with Skylab for what was planned to be a 56-day mission. Skylab was the United States' very first space station, and to this day the only space station solely operated by the U.S. It had been launched earlier that year in 1973, and the Skylab 4 crew was the third and final crew to ever work on board the station. They had several goals to conduct in those 56 days. 1, to conduct extensive experiments in space biology and human physiology to study the effects of long-duration spaceflight on the human body. 2, to perform solar observations using Skylab's Solar Observatory. They aimed to study the sun's behavior, including solar flares and sunspots. 3, to conduct astronomy and space science experiments, including studying cosmic rays and other space phenomena. And finally, 4, to make Earth observations in order to monitor changes in the Earth's atmosphere, weather, and surface, as well as environmental changes and effects from solar activity. Now, I listed 4, but there ended up being more like 6 or 7 by the end. The mission got off to a bit of an ornery start. The previous Skylab crew, Skylab 3, had left a surprise for the crew. When they arrived and docked, they were shocked to see 3 astronauts already standing in Skylab wearing flight suits. When they looked closer, they realized they were just dummies made up of spare parts and garbage bags and wearing spare flight suits. Just a little prank. But the first serious problem occurred when William Pogue got sick. He suffered from space sickness, which happens to quite a few astronauts as their bodies adjust to weightlessness. It's similar to the body's reaction to motion sickness or seasickness, and while it's quite common, about half of the people who've gone to space have experienced it, the crew chose to hide his illness from Mission Control. After downloading voice recordings, Mission Control heard the crew discussing Pogue's sickness, and they were reprimanded by Alan Shepard, the astronaut office chief. The illness was a surprise to the crew in the first place because Pogue's nickname was Iron Belly. He was apparently one of the only astronauts to never get sick in the spinning G-force trainer in Houston. Edward Gibson, the science pilot, later recalled the blowback. Quote, "He got on the line and read us the riot act for not telling them immediately," end quote, said Ed. "Al was okay, we just didn't like being chewed out in front of the whole world." Part of the problem, and this has since been acknowledged by NASA, was that they didn't allow enough of an adjustment period for the crew after they arrived in space. They had the 3-man crew of first-time space travelers working with an incredibly full schedule right away. And they had added more projects, experiments, more studies, and had doubled the amount of planned spacewalks. This small indiscretion early in the mission laid a groundwork of tension between Mission Control and the Skylab 4 crew. And they had large shoes to fill. The previous Skylab crew had completed their 59.5-day mission with great success and had been named the 150% crew because of how much they had gotten done. It had been a record year for the U.S. space program, and now this final mission of the year, and what will be the final mission of Skylab, was being jeopardized by a contentious work relationship between the astronauts and Mission Control. All of this was exacerbated by another fact. Their mission was extended from 56 days to 84, the longest space mission in history up to that point. The crew on the ground expected a lot from these astronauts, and because they were all new guys, the folks on the ground hadn't established a great working relationship or rapport with them just yet. Every time Skylab was contacted, it was preempted with a litany of requests, tests, checks, and instructions from the ground. Those instructions usually arrived via the teleprinter on board every morning, and the crew felt micromanaged. Every minute of every waking hour was being dictated and checked by Mission Control. And Ed Gibson said, quote, "One morning, we received about 60 feet of instructions, which then needed to be understood and divided up before we even got to work," end quote. In addition to extra hours, days, weeks, projects, and tests that weren't in the original flight plan, they were now being asked to research a comet. The comet Kohoutek had been discovered, and in another last-minute addition to their workload, they were given detailed instructions on research that needed to be conducted into the behavior of the comet. Partway into their mission, the astronauts were complaining. They felt they were being pushed too hard and there was too much mission creep and added responsibilities. They knew that they were being compared to Skylab 3 and were being asked to do too much of everything. Mission Control felt they weren't getting enough work done. Just before the midpoint of the mission, a communications break occurred that, to this day, is often described as the first mutiny in space. Others have called it a strike. As to whether or not it really happened, we'll get to that. But here's what occurred. Because they were tasked with doing so many jobs and daily briefings with ground control took so much time, they decided that only one crew member needed to be present for those briefings instead of all 3, something that Houston was okay with. But on the morning of December 27, 1973, no one showed up for the briefing. The radios were off. The crew just skipped the meeting, and so for that day they did what they wanted. They took a day off. But is that the truth? Well, the first account of this wasn't published until August of 1976, when the New Yorker ran a story by Henry S.F. Cooper about it. He referred to it as a strike in space. He also wrote a book that year about Skylab and made the same claim. In 1980, the Harvard Business School developed a case study entitled Strike in Space, written by Michael B. McCaskey and E. Mary Lou Balbucky. But none of these authors ever gave a credible source as to where the claim originated. Regardless, the story stuck. Here's what we know for certain. All of the contentious feelings were there. They're evident in the transcripts of the communications from the mission. And there was one morning when the crew missed the briefing. But Ed Gibson says it was all a misunderstanding. There was a regularly scheduled day off. It wasn't a strike or mutiny. And as for the briefing, apparently they had just forgotten whose turn it was to attend, so nobody did. And so for one full orbit around the Earth, about 90 minutes, they weren't in communication. Apparently, some said that the word strike made its way through the control room and eventually out the doors to the media. And whatever the truth is, here's something that happened about halfway into the mission that speaks to the collaborative spirit between the astronauts and their counterparts back in Houston. Flight surgeons suggested increasing the astronauts' exercise time from 60 to 90 minutes a day. This would help as a stress relief and break from their grueling schedule. And on December 30th, Mission Control had a heart-to-heart with the crew. Richard Truly was control capsule communicator in Houston, and he decided to completely revisit and revise the daily schedule. The 14 to 16-hour work shifts were lightened, and as a result of a lighter schedule, the crew's productivity actually increased. Truly called it the first sensitivity session in space. The crew completed their record-setting 84-day mission, splashing down on February 8th of 1974. And for the next 4 years, it would keep the record as the longest stay in space. And the result of the mission, other than a host of scientific research into the Earth, the comet, and the human body, was that a lot of consideration was given to the psyche of the astronaut during extended periods in space. It forced NASA to study more about space medicine, team management, and psychology, and it literally changed how they plan missions. So when we look at our current situation of astronauts that have been orbiting the Earth for 193 days longer than the crew of Skylab 4, perhaps we can credit their mental and physical well-being to a mutiny that may or may not have happened in the winter of 1973. The internet says it's true. It's time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today, I'm calling Elyssa Phillips. Elyssa is an internationally performing stand-up, improviser, and sketch comedian. She hosts a monthly all-female stand-up show at the Comedy Store in Hollywood and was most recently seen nationally opening up for Iliza Shlesinger. Elyssa hosts and features regularly on the road when she's not in LA. You can see her on Hacks, Silicon Valley, Fresh Off the Boat, and The Mindy Project. That's just a few credits. I was looking at her IMDb. It's pretty impressive. Elyssa is also very, very single and commonly posts with the hashtag "This is why I'm single," which is a lot of fun. You can search for hashtag "This is why I'm single" and find a lot of great stuff there. What's going on? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Also, it's hashtag "Why I'm Still Single."
Why I'm still single, not
just
this
so we
is
get
why I'm
it
single.
right.
Why I'm still single. Yeah, you'll find some other single person if you do the one I said.
Yeah, for sure. Which fair. Which I
Probably
deserve.
exists.
I deserve.
Probably exists. So we've been trying to schedule you in on the podcast for a few weeks now. What's in your world this week? What's happening?
I know, and I want to say thank you again. You're
of course
so great for putting up with me and my crazy. And I'm such like a neurotic New York Jew that like. Also, thank you because I like all of the like. Where do I have to be? What do I have to have prepared? Where do you want me? What time? What are we doing with our lives? Like, thank you for dealing with me because
it's fine.
You're great.
I've been good. It helps me when one of us is that way, because if I'm not, someone has to be. And because of the fact that this isn't my full-time job, I tend to be a little bit almost too casual with this sometimes, where I'm like, yeah, I'll find someone on Sunday afternoon to do the podcast on Sunday night. And then it gets to be Sunday night and I'm like, I don't have a guest. But
that's so funny.
I'm happy that we're on top of things here. What are you doing this week? What kind of shows you got going on?
I just performed last night in San Diego. And which was great, so much fun. I love being there. And let's see, this week I'm in, wait for it. This week I am in Bakersfield. Before that I'm in Palm Springs. And then I think I have 2 shows coming up at the Comedy Store in LA. And then I go back out to Ohio.
Oh yeah, you'll be somewhere in northern Ohio, maybe like
Massillon.
Massillon, yes, Massillon. I'm down in Columbus, Ohio. That's where I'm
at.
Oh
man, I haven't made it to Columbus yet, and I need to because can I just tell you, this is real, and anyone who knows me knows this is real. I'm not just saying this. I'm obsessed with Ohio.
Is that right?
Anytime I get invited to perform in Ohio, I go. I think I played in Ohio last year, maybe more than I played in Los Angeles.
That's
Like
amazing.
it's my favorite state to play in.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 or 3 really good clubs here in Columbus. There's a Funny Bone, but
Funny
there's
bone,
also
yeah.
the Attic, which a lot of people come in and play at. And
Yeah.
so we'll have to get you in there. I'll have to let some people know. We also do there's a comedy festival in Columbus that's kind of new. There was a long-standing comedy festival. It went away, and now there's a new one.
I
So
saw it. I didn't apply for it, but maybe I will. Maybe I
I
will.
I did one year, and it's weird as a comedy magician to do comedy festivals
Yeah.
because but I did one year where I got a wild hair, and I applied for a bunch of them, and I did like 3 of them, and I had a blast doing them.
Yeah.
But it is a fish out of water scenario. It's not as bad as it used to be. Like I feel like in the early 2000s, comedians really like thumbed their nose at people who had some sort of other thing they did, whether it was music or
Music.
magic or
Yeah.
whatever. But I feel like everyone's much more accepting now of
Yeah.
alternative types of comedy.
Yeah.
So
I
I
love that.
love it. Yeah,
I would think the tricky part in a festival is that your sets are so limited to time in festivals typically, you know what I mean? It's like it's
yeah,
not you don't really have much leeway. Like you have to have like a festival set. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. It ends
So
up
for
being like
magic, I would feel like it's a little bit tricky because if you're going to do stuff with the crowd, that's going to eat up so much of your like I don't do crowd work when I do festivals because that just eats up my time,
absolutely. Yeah, it's
you
hard.
know?
It's hard. And one of them, I challenged myself to not write a set and to write it that day.
Yeah.
And the 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 universe gave me a gift. That was the day that the Laurel and Yanny thing came out a few years ago. I don't know if you remember the Laurel and Yanny
No.
thing. It was one of those blue dress, black dress things, right? Where some people
Okay.
hear one thing and some people hear another. And some people heard the word Laurel from this audio soundbite, and other people heard Yanny. And I wrote like a 5-minute piece about that with magic, and it ended up staying in the show for a while. It's in one of
I
my
love that.
cruise ship shows now. It's just like a fun little interpret. Of course, I have to tell the story about, hey, so 8 years ago there was this phenomenon that happened.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's get into the fun stuff here. So I do a segment where instead of me quizzing you, I like to ask the guests if they maybe know of something that I haven't heard of, and I just use the honor system whether or not I've heard of it. So did
Okay.
you prepare something for that?
I did. I did. So what's funny is at first I was gonna like dig deep and like really like dig for something.
Yeah,
And then I was like, let me just go with like fun things I know and let's see if you know it.
sure.
Um, so everybody knows famously in the movie When Harry Met Sally that the line "I'll have what she's having" was improvised by
By Meg Ryan.
no, but
Oh, I'm
great.
sorry.
By Rob Reiner's mom.
Oh, was it? No, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. That's
Well, no, hold
fantastic.
on. That's not the fact.
Okay, well, that's a fact. You've
given.
already won
That's
the
a
game.
given. Now you're getting two. No, the line is "I'll have what she's having," which is Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal are doing their
Yeah.
scene. Meg Ryan fakes the orgasm, and then the camera pans over to an older woman, and she says, "I'll have what she's having," and that woman is Rob Reiner's mom.
Oh, that woman, the actress is Rob Reiner's mom.
Yeah, she's not an actress; she's just Rob Reiner's mom.
That's amazing.
But that I thought was like public knowledge, but maybe not. So maybe
No.
this one will cut even a little bit deeper. There's a scene in the movie where Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal are talking. They're in an art museum, and Billy Crystal does like that. Waiter, there is too much pepper on my paprikash,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I will be proud to partake of your pecan pie. That scene is improvised, and all Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner said to each other was like, "Do something in a funny voice." And if you look real carefully, there's a moment where Meg Ryan looks off camera because she's looking at Rob Reiner to be like, "Am I supposed to go along with this? Like, what is going on right now?"
I
And
love that.
and they kept it in the movie, which I think is like brilliant.
Hmm.
So that's my fact. I didn't know if you knew that.
Totally. You gave me two. So I didn't know the thing about Rob Reiner's mom. I love
Oh
that.
yeah.
I also love moments like that. We did an episode about Hateful Eight a couple months ago, and there's a scene where I can't remember who the female lead is in that, but she looks off camera because the male lead smashes a guitar that he wasn't supposed to smash, and she knew that it was the legitimate, like, invaluable guitar that he was
Oh.
smashing, and she looks off to the probably the art director, like, we didn't swap out guitars, and they left that in, and so you can see
I love that.
her look of shock is real in that moment, which
I love that.
it's
I
great.
love stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Those fun behind the scenes little
Yeah.
nuggets. So okay, you did well with that. Let's get into the topic. For this question, we're going to play for a joke. So Alyssa, if you get it wrong, you got to tell me a joke. If you get it
Okay.
right, I will tell you a joke. I didn't prepare a
Great.
joke because sometimes it's more fun to pull from the old joke books on the thing, and we look for one that's not misogynist or racist, and we just have
Love
sometimes we
that.
just have to keep going. So
Love that.
what was the so-called mutiny incident aboard Skylab 4? So, this was 1973. Skylab was the first U.S. space station, and one of these was a mutiny incident aboard Skylab 4. Was it A, the astronauts refused to work until they were given more snacks? B, the astronauts stopped communicating with NASA for a day? Or C, the astronauts started playing pranks on each other? One of these is described as a mutiny.
Those are all mutiny offenses to me.
They
I
are.
really hope it's the snacks one. I don't think it is. I would like to think they weren't like petty like that. Like, give us more red M&Ms. But like, I really hope that's what it was. I'm gonna go practical on this. But I really hope it's A or C. But I'm gonna go with B.
The answer is B. Correct.
Yeah.
The astronauts stopped communicating with NASA for a day. The crew ceased contact with mission control for a full day in protest of the exhausting schedule and lack of rest. It was referred to
Yeah.
as a mutiny due to the sudden break in communication. But in their later years, the astronauts said the whole thing was a misunderstanding. It was never meant to be a strike or a mutiny. It was just they forgot to call in for the briefing, and then there was a whole rotation where they didn't communicate. But to their credit, to the astronauts' credit, there was a heart-to-heart moment, a come-to-Jesus moment 3 days later, and that meeting with ground control shaped how we treat astronauts today in terms of their workload. So you
No
look at
way.
these folks that are on board right now, the ISS right now, they've been on for like 8 months when they're supposed to be on for 8 days or something.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of the protocol that they're following is because of this thing in 1973, because of this thing where they just worked them, and they stayed up there longer than they were supposed to. So
Yeah. But wouldn't this whole thing have been cooler if the answer was snacks?
it would have been much because it would have required another spacecraft to deliver snacks.
To deliver like Fritos or whatever
Yeah.
it was. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, the one guy like,
If
I
you
like Star
open-
Crunch.
If you open Pringles in space, what happens? I don't know.
I don't know. Once you pop,
You just
I don't-
can't
it's-
stop, but maybe it does
the
stop.
universe knows forever. I don't know what happens. I wonder
Me
if they it would be really cool if they floated up out of the can.
Dude,
Yeah.
I have,
You know,
I
due
want
to
to make
the-
that commercial.
There is a skeletal lengthening that happens in space, and with my guess would be that your hand fits inside the Pringles can because
Shut
of
up.
that. I don't know. That's
You
my
know
guess.
so much useless information. This
I'm
is
not
amazing.
I'm not a medical doctor. I just play one on Monday mornings. So this is the Friars Club Encyclopedia of Jokes, 2,000 one-liners, straight lines. It's horrible jokes in here, but there are 500 pages. Tell me a number between 1 and 500.
75.
75. Let's see what 75 brings us.
It's a great book to have.
It's so much fun. Okay, so the topic here is cars and driving. I'm just going to read the top one because it's from Carlin. It says, have you noticed anyone driving faster than you is an idiot and anyone driving slower than you is a moron? It's very Carlin. Let me find a better one.
It is very Carlin, though. Like, if you think of his, like, delivery when he would say it.
Here's Steve Allen. That's a racist joke. Not going to tell that one.
Shocker.
Yeah. Monica said,
Happy National Women's History Month.
yes. Seriously. Oh man, these aren't good. These are
Are
everything.
these all like racist and misogynistic, and that's
A lot
why
of
you
them
can't
are.
say them?
Yeah, a lot of them are. Yeah. I mean,
Love that.
I'll read it. It's Steve Allen's. I'll read it because we now that we know it in context of this is an old comedian who's dead. I was in a cab the other day, and you'll find this hard to believe. It was actually driven by an American citizen. What? Like people would be like, "Oh, that's hilarious."
I get it. I mean, back in the day, that was probably very funny.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the Friars, and all these old joke books are just full of. I've told the story on here a few times, but I tried to give one to a friend of mine's daughter I was like, hey, here's a joke book I found at a garage sale or something. And next time we saw her, she gave it back to me. She's like, I don't understand any of these because
Oh my
all
God.
the references were
Yeah.
so dated. So yeah, anyway, there's a joke. For the next question, we're going to play for a ride on SpaceX next mission. So, if you get this, you get to go on SpaceX Crew 10, which is supposed to launch Wednesday. What happened to Skylab after the end of the Skylab 4 mission? A, it was abandoned and left to drift in space. B, it was converted into a luxurious space hotel. Or C, it was deorbited and re-entered Earth's atmosphere.
Ooh. Okay, I have no idea. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna manifest what I want it to be, and I would like it to have been converted into a fancy hotel.
The answer is actually, that's the one it's not. But now that I'm looking at these other two, it could be both A or C. So it was abandoned and left adrift in space, but it also deorbited naturally, and then it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. So basically what happened was...
It's a trick. I got it wrong, but it's a trick question.
Yeah, so you got it wrong, and it's a trick question. You had a 66% chance of getting that one right. But no, it was...
tracks.
They left it uncrewed for years. So for 6 years, there was no one in there. And then eventually on its own, it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. 1979, year of my birth, and burned up with some debris falling into the ocean. So...
Aww.
Yeah. So unfortunately,
would you go into space if you were invited? Would you go?
Yeah, 100%.
Wow, that was a very emphatic, fast yes.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a little bit of background on this. I am more brave than I am smart when it comes to stuff like that. So I have been stranded in the DMZ between North and South Korea just on a whim. That happened to me once. That was 2010.
On a whim? Yeah.
Well, I was performing on the base that's at the DMZ, the Joint Security Area, and my bus driver got me and my buddy lost. And for 2 hours, we were walking around the woods in between North and South Korea before a staff sergeant who was just running through the trails found us.
Oh, my God.
And he goes, holy shit, what are you guys doing here? And he led us back to where we were supposed to be, where we were late. So, yeah. And again, I didn't feel that was scary until I think back on it. Same thing with... Last year, the Navy flew me onto an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Red Sea while they were active. So there were flights leaving and bombing Yemen while I was on board.
Oh my God.
I found out months later, this is all public knowledge, by the way, I'm allowed to talk about all this. So just a few months ago, it came out that about 3 weeks after I was on board, a ballistic missile from the Houthis landed within a football field of that aircraft carrier.
That's insane.
I didn't feel, it was scary to land on it, but I didn't feel threatened or, I felt very safe to be there when I was there. But yeah, so if you say, hey, you're going to go do this thing, maybe maybe the crew of the ISS needs a magician.
A magician? Yeah.
Hands down, tomorrow I'm gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Whatever training, I'll do it. Totally fine. How about you? Would you?
You want another real answer?
Obviously.
I feel like I would only go up into space if it was during my time of the month, because I really just want to see how all of that works.
There's probably a study you can read on that without having to do it. I mean, we've had women in space for long enough. I want to experience it for myself. You just want to know, because it might, maybe the cramps aren't as bad. You don't know. Maybe.
That's what I'm wondering.
Maybe this
are
is
my
the
cramps
answer.
Different in zero gravity?
It could be. I don't know how gravity plays a part in that, having not been a woman, but possibly.
How do tampons work?
Oh yeah, I don't. Oh, that's a great question.
That's what I really want to know. So I would go, but I would need it to be timed during my time of the month.
Okay, fair. All right. For question 3, we're playing for a sticker. It is 3 inches and sticky, and if
I had a nickel.
It's oh my God. How is it I've been saying that line for so long and no one's ever? So since its discovery in 1846, approximately how many trips around the sun has planet Neptune made? There's no one would ever know this. So these
My mother would know this.
Hard. Is that
right?
My
mom would know this.
Space junkie mother?
Yeah, huge. I'm so nervous right now. What are the choices? Okay,
the choices are A, 15 trips around the sun, B, 465 trips, or C, just 1 trip. This is Neptune.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Since it was discovered in 1846,
Uh-huh.
approximately how many trips around the sun has the planet Neptune made? It's either 15, 465, or 1.
How fast does Neptune move? I'm gonna say 1.
This is a
It's either
shocker
1 or
to me.
15.
Are
What?
you gonna? I said this is a shocker to me too. The answer you said 1. It's
I'm gonna go
1.
1.
It's 1. It's 1. Neptune takes 165 years to complete one full orbit around the sun, and since it was discovered in 1846, Neptune only finished its first full orbit in 2011. So
Okay.
it's next time it'll come back around will be 2176.
Do you want to know why I know this?
Why?
Or like why that was like my inclination? This is like crazy and weird, but I'm like a huge astrology geek.
Okay.
And my favorite astrologer, I'll just give her a shout out, is Chani Nicholas. And I listen to her podcast and I have like her Chani app. And I believe like we either just had or in the middle of like a Neptune retrograde, and it's like a very big astrological event. And
Interesting.
I remember her saying something like this. I'm sweating out of my pits right now because my mom is gonna watch this and be like, thank God you got it right. What did
Yeah.
I teach you?
Yeah.
You're
So
single and you don't know Neptune's orbit.
and you didn't credit your mother with that. You credit a random the astrologer, not your
I
mother.
know.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
So for question 4, we're going to play for a souvenir from your city. You're in LA, but that could also be a souvenir from New York. I'm totally fine with either. The Skylab wasn't the first space station. When it comes to space stations, the U.S. was beat by another country by 2 years. Which one of these was the first space station? Was it A, China's ZU-7, B, Russia's Salyut-1, or C, the United Kingdom's Orbex Prime? So the answer was either China, Russia, or the UK. China ZU-7, Russia Salyut-1, the UK's Orbex Prime.
Michael, my heart is palpitating. This entire episode
None of this matters.
is just a trick to make me disappoint my mother and how much
Well, tell
space
your mother
knowledge
to
I
stop
did not
listening to
retain as a
podcasts.
child. Do you know what it was like to make the solar system diorama with a mother who's into astrology? Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's either China or Russia. It's either China or Russia. Elyssa, I'm gonna go with Russia.
Russia's the answer. Russia Salyut-1. See, Mom, you raised us a space genius.
You raised this.
A space genius.
She's gonna be so proud of me, finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Elyssa, you know so much about space.
Why can't you find a husband? I'm so glad you know about Neptune's orbit.
Yeah. Why are you an actress and not a rocket scientist?
Honestly, this is what my mother was going to say to me when this comes out. I can't wait.
I love it. I love it. It was launched on April 1, 1971. It was also known as DOS-1 or Durable Orbital Station 1. China's ZU-7 I made up. The United Kingdom's Orbex Prime is something they're planning for the future. Apparently, they want to do their own space station.
You
like
made
next
up
year.
the China answer?
Yeah, I did.
You're a bastard.
But I searched for the word freedom in China, and that's where I got that ZU, ZIYOU. So there you go.
Fantastic. Well played.
Yeah.
Well played, dear sir.
Yeah. Question 5. This one's for all the marbles, Elyssa. So if you get this one right, you're welcome back on the podcast anytime you want. If you get it wrong, banned for life. Never going to ask you again. Here's your question.
There's so much pressure on this podcast.
And this
today.
one's open-ended, so no multiple choice. If you, Elyssa Phillips, were stranded in space for a year, how is it that you would spend your time?
I would love to say the first word that came to my mind, but I don't know if I can say it on the
No,
podcast.
I try to keep this one clean, but I'm with you. I know where you're at.
Okay, the second thing I would do, the second way I would spend my time in space if I was in space for a year. Wow, this is like the second thing that came to my mind, and this is not funny. This is like genuine.
No, I want to hear it. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be funny.
What came to my mind was that I would write like thank you notes to all of my friends and family for being in my life.
Wow, that's
Isn't
a
that
good
weird?
answer.
I
I would never
guess.
have come up with such a gracious answer. No, I would have never said that. I would have been like, I would write a book, or I would, I
No.
would like write my life story, or I don't know though, because you think about that, and my answer would have to, I'm writing this stuff, and who knows if it's for me, if it's for the idea that other people would read it. But
Yeah.
for you, like, it's the same way, really, because that could just be you expressing the gratitude from your life, or it could be you with the plan of people actually getting these things and you being returned.
Yeah.
After, I guess I did say for a year. I didn't say what happens at the end of that year. So assuming
That
we
is
would be
true.
coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you go for the year and you never come back? Or do you go for a year and come back safely? So yeah. Either way,
yeah.
I think I stick with my answers for both my first thing I would do and the second thing I would do.
It's a good answer and it's right, which means you're welcome back on the podcast. But my other thing is like, there's no Wi-Fi in space. I assume.
Oh.
I don't know if that's true. There's
Wouldn't there be? No, I guess
I
there
don't
wouldn't
know.
be.
I don't know if there is, but if there isn't, that would force me to do some serious like work on myself.
Yeah.
I would actually have to think and possibly read books, which I always say I want to do, and then I end up not doing.
Yeah.
So maybe I would just read some good books during that time as well. Like
I
right
think that's
now,
fair.
if my Wi-Fi went down in this home for a day, I would feel like I was stranded in space for a year. So
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've gone through instances where, like, I remember being in New York during the blackout,
Mm.
and there nothing worked, and it was like very, very scary, but also it was like, what do you do? What do you do?
I
Like phones
once
weren't working, like they're like it was crazy.
it was like in the 2010s, we went on vacation to the beach, and I purposely decided it was going to be a tech-free vacation.
Love that.
And it must have been easier to do that now because I couldn't do it now. So back then,
Yeah.
it must have been easier to do that. And I found myself writing so much. But what was interesting was this was also the height of like Twitter, when Twitter was good and
Yeah.
people used it.
Yeah.
And I found that the things that I was writing were tweets. And I didn't realize it. I wasn't trying to write tweets. I was just finding that's how I was thinking. Was
Were
like,
you writing
that's
like short, just like
just
short?
short form, like almost like one-liners, but more observational, really interesting. Like, and I had some good tweets that when we came back that I was able to write because of that. My favorite one never got any credit because I'm not sure if it's funny or not, but it's funny to me. And that was, I just watched the Curious Case of Benjamin Button in reverse. It was Legends of the Fall, which to me is funny, but the audience that's listening to this podcast is silent because they don't understand what I'm talking about. But to me, it's
Don't know
hilarious.
any of the things you're talking about. I have a bit where I do like a singing bit,
Mhm.
and one of the artists that I parody is Richard Marx, and it's so funny because there's so many people who don't know who Richard Marx is,
But the
and then
people who
sometimes
know Richard Marx are way into the joke.
yeah, they love it. They
Yeah.
love it. And then I have to just do like a little bit of a tag of like, oh, like I should update my discography. I was like, it should be like, Kendrick Lamar, not Kendrick Lamar, or Drake or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, but I get it. The cultural reference thing is real.
When I first started performing in colleges, I had a reference to Back to the Future, and very quickly I realized that these college students had not seen Back to the Future.
That's so sad. That's
It
so
is.
sad.
It is. And I've been doing colleges for 22 years. So I've seen a lot of cultural references come and go. Harry Potter came and went. So I can no longer do Harry Potter references anymore. Whereas I used
Yeah.
to, that was a good fit into what I do.
Everything is so fast now. Like I was doing Luigi Mangione jokes for a little bit, and now
Yeah.
it's like, I was doing Wicked jokes for a little bit, and now it's like, thank God they're gonna have part two, so like I can bring
You'll
those
get
jokes
that.
back. But
Even I had a Taylor Swift joke last year that's not getting the reaction that it got last year. I mean, in the last 4 or 5 shows, I've noticed that it's declined, which is crazy because she was on top of the world prior to February.
Yes.
Like
she will always be on top of the world.
well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. But in terms of like front of mind for people and college students, and especially, where because the joke is that I find someone and ask them to name a famous person, a celebrity, and I've made a prediction on a marker board. And no matter what they say, I turn it around and it says Taylor Swift. And the joke is, here's what happens. I write Taylor Swift every time and ask a white girl. And so half of the time they actually do say Taylor Swift and they think I've done a magic trick and I'm explaining how it's done. And the other half of the time it's just a joke. But now they're always saying Timothée Chalamet. So I might
Wow.
have to change it. I don't know.
I can
Yeah.
only imagine. I need to start doing. I've been asked to do colleges, and I've always thought about it, but I think that would be interesting just because I feel like it's a really good test of like what's current and hip and
It
like,
it
you
is,
know,
and I'd be happy to talk to you about it, and in terms of like
yeah, we should.
how to what to get into and stuff, and there's a Pete Holmes HBO special or HBO show called Crashing has an episode
Yeah.
about the college market that is the most accurate depiction of the college entertainment business for comedians that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So that's a great place to start. It's a crazy, crazy world where catchphrases and nostalgia play huge.
I wouldn't even know what those are. Like, do people say on fleek anymore?
No, I
don't
know,
probably
I know.
not.
I'm constantly asking like, what shows did you grow up with? Like the college students, like what shows do you know? Like what do you all know? And it's hard to figure out because it does change very fast. And in terms
Yeah.
of even TikTok references, right? Like, you might reference something that has millions and millions of views on TikTok, and no one has seen it because TikTok is so siloed. Like in terms of the algorithm,
Yeah.
like there's millions of people who have seen it, but more people who haven't because it's just not in their interest.
Yeah.
So
Like on their explore page. That's insane. Yeah. It's
it
bananas.
is crazy. It is crazy. Well, it has been awesome having you on. You did wonderful on the quiz, and I want everyone to go check out your website. It's ElyssaPhillips.com, ELYSSA Phillips.com. You can see there's links to the IMDb there. You can see all the projects that Elyssa's been in, and you can also see where to see her perform stand up if you are in the area. Also, if you're in one more time, what's the plug in Ohio coming up? There's a
I'm going to be at Craftpots
Massillon.
Comedy Club in Massillon, Ohio in the end of March, like 28th, 29th. I have to look at my own Instagram to know where I'm playing, but like the last weekend in March is when I'm in
Yes,
Massillon,
28,
Ohio.
29. I'll be in Erie, PA. You'll be in Massillon, Ohio, Crackpots. Get your tickets to I know there's a lot of Ohio listeners, and so get your tickets to go see Elyssa Phillips. Thanks once again for coming on. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. It was great. I'm so glad that I didn't have to have anything about space prepared because I don't want to talk to my mom if I don't have to.
Your mom will be proud.
Thank God.
That's all for this week. Thank you so much to Elyssa Phillips for being my guest, and thanks to you for listening. Here's the voice of a kid who staged a 24-hour mutiny against his parents.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endress, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official Emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.